Hey everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jermillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the lives of the people in my network, leaders that I've met recently or leaders that I've known for a while. So I want to know which book it is that has contributed the most to who they are as a person, as a business person in their life, whatever it may be, all those worlds intersect. And the way that this podcast works is I have three categories of books that I cover. The first is a book that they're sharing with me that I haven't read at all. The second is where we both share the book or we both cover the book, having read it for specifically for the episode or in our past lives before the series. The third is where I'm lucky enough to have the author and or publisher on to discuss the book, and just to get their tone and their sense of what it is that they want to share out to the community, out to the masses. And my guest today is Eric Hamilton. And Eric is a dynamic sales leader, accomplished author, and the driving force behind Hamilton Sales Academy. With over 2 decades of experience in sales and leadership, Eric has a proven track record of transforming underperforming teams into high achievers. He's the author of the best-selling book, The Sales Blueprint: What Winners Do Differently, which provides a comprehensive guide to achieving consistent sales success through preparation, mindset, and execution. Whether through his book, speaking engagements, or training sessions, Eric is dedicated to equipping individuals and organizations with the tools they need to excel. And Eric had reached out when he heard about the series. He wanted to come on and share about his story, his book. We learned a bit about each other, as I do with all my guests that reach out to be on the series. And I think he has a lot of value to provide to the listeners of this series. I've realized that with anybody that's in sales, if they hold their weight in water, it's because there's more to it than just numbers. There's more to it than just the process. It's a lot of who that person is, what their story is, what they want to share with others. So, Eric, I'm glad you're here joining me for this conversation.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, Sean, thank you for the introduction. I also appreciate the opportunity to join your show. I've watched a few episodes and I really like the content. I like the authenticity of how you go through your interviews and your conversations with your guests. So looking forward to our conversation today.
I appreciate that. Just because I hope that's what comes through. It is a curiosity. It is authentic. It's not just shtick for, a script or a series. So I'm glad that you saw that in those conversations, in those episodes that you saw. So Eric, when it comes to you, who are you today? Can you speak a little bit about the work that you're doing, what that looks like in the day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. So, really good question. So, Eric Hamilton, first and foremost, I'm a man of God. I've been married for 18 years, so I have a family, 3 children. I also like passions of mine, things that I do is I love real estate. I've been in real estate since 2001, but ultimately, coaching is another passion of mine. I really, really enjoy watching people just flourish. When you are able to see someone achieve something that they may not have thought they were able to achieve, it is so rewarding when you see and work with a person to get them to be able to do that. So that's a little bit about me. I spend a lot of time with my family. I'm a family guy. So I do. So right now, my youngest little Eric is 15. He's in high school. So a lot of my time is spent on that. But that's me. That's in my comfort zone. That's Eric Hamilton.
Eric, when it comes to you, that appreciation that you have for coaching, how it stands out, that it comes from that understanding of helping somebody achieve their next level of success, of performance, even just understanding who they are. It's
Yes.
amazing how it's amazing that you can bring them to the next level. But the best part about coaching is when they realize just even before that greater performance, what they're all about. How often people don't ask themselves certain questions, they don't look at themselves in certain ways. They're not curious about themselves. And a good coach can do that for them, kind of open
Yeah.
up who they are to themselves. When it comes to your appreciation of coaching, where does that come from?
Yeah.
What do you
So
think?
that's a really good question. I've had some really strong mentors in
Mhm.
my past, and they looked past where I was at that particular time, and they pulled things out of me that I did not know that I had. Even though I felt like I was going to do things well, I thought I would be great in the end, right? In the whole in 20 years, I'd be perfectly fine. They were able to pull things out of me at that time that I did not think, number one, I was ready for, and then number two, I was capable of at that particular time. And watching those small little people, small, not possible, but small investments in
Yeah. Yeah.
me in particular, in my future, ultimately helped shape who I am today. So I think it's important to continue to do the exact same thing as I invest in people, meet them where they are, and get them to see something larger than where they are today. So I think the passion came from people that invested in me, and I just appreciate it.
Can you tell us a little bit about your role at Everbridge as senior sales director?
Yeah, so I've been at Everbridge for 3 years. My role and responsibility is I oversee the Western North American sales for Everbridge on the new business side. And I've got a team of 9, and my job is to come just straightforward. It's pretty much on the sales side. So we go after Fortune 500 companies. But also with that team of 9, it's important for me to coach and develop the team. And so I spend time learning how what they want to accomplish, what their goals are, and how they go about it. I'll listen and I'll study, and then we always have conversations on how do we improve, what is the path to get there. And whether it's in sales or anything you do, whatever those goals are, where you want to accomplish, you got to start by saying, what is it that you want to do? And then we begin to paint a picture and put together a blueprint of how we get to that particular destination. So that's my role in a nutshell. Yeah, I've got some executive leadership exposure, but ultimately, it's really around building out the culture of the sales team and then bringing in that revenue for the organization.
Eric, when it comes to you hearing about the work you're doing today, it's amazing. I love the impression that you want to make on people in your community, people you're coaching, people you're working with. How does that story start? So, can you walk me through how your career story started? Whether it was going into college, whether it was going into the workforce, how did that start? And then, can you walk me through how you got to where you are now? What does that path look like?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always a beginning that seems like it's so far away, but in actuality, it's not very far. For me, I've always been a very curious young man. And early on, and before I even knew anything about sales or what I really wanted to do, I would do things to earn income. So I remember one of my earliest kind of business expenditure ventures. I started a lawn mowing company. Now, again, it wasn't big like 2 men in a truck. It was literally myself and 2 other people, 2 other kids my age. And I
Mhm.
remember we would go around and I would try to uh, you know, get homeowners to allow us to cut the grass. Well, I wasn't the one cutting the grass. I was a negotiator, and I had a couple people with me that would do the grass cutting, and we all split the money. And I thought it was such an amazing thing that my skill set was to negotiate the agreement at a young age. And this, I don't know, maybe 13, 14, probably no more than that, while I had a team that was able to do a part, but everyone had a piece to play. And then we move on, and I said, you know what? I actually, this is kind of cool. And then I remember one of my earlier stories that my older brother, I used to charge him and his friend to come in my room and play my video game at the time. Like, well, you know what? This is kind of cool. This Nintendo might be profitable. Okay, this Nintendo might be profitable. But that moved into I began selling long distance, and it was the multi-level marketing way back then. It was multi-level marketing, so I got involved when I was in college, and yeah, I was. We were selling long distance. You always start with your friends and your family, and I did really well at it. And then I had to pay my way through college, and I worked at a cable company, and I would sell. I have to call people in the evenings to try to get them to upgrade their cable packages. Well, all that time and all that effort, all that energy, I began to understand it's the small little things you do that separates the people that exceed to the ones that just get by. Small things, as an example, when I was doing telemarketing, I would have a mirror sitting by my desk, and this is way before Zooms. You weren't Zooming back then, but I remember I would look at the mirror before I jumped on the call. The reason why is your tone is set through the call. So my facial expression, so I would smile to myself before I made that next call, because that energy is going to come across in that phone call. There is
Yeah.
a difference if I'm smiling and I'm upbeat and I say, "Hey, John, this is Eric Hamilton," as opposed to, "Hey, John, this is Eric."
Yeah.
It, but again, that's my natural voice. "Hey, John, this is Eric." Hey,
Yeah,
John, this is Eric Hamilton. Two totally different things, but I'm saying the exact same thing,
yeah.
but there's a second piece to it. So I learned a lot through that process. And I went from inbound or outbound calling and selling to moving on and got promoted to direct sales, where I was outside selling cable packages to people in neighborhoods I probably shouldn't have been in, all the way into the business side. And so again, it just started to progress from there. But what's important is the foundation was set. The foundation in what I wanted to do was set early. When we were doing lawn mowing, when we were doing the video games, that was setting the foundation of how to properly communicate with people. And that helped me continue to advance my career because I had the foundation laid. So that's a little bit about the journey. And obviously, I just continued to ascend in this particular world and move through corporate America. But ultimately, I had to get those fundamentals right. Otherwise, you rise before you're ready. And I wanted to make sure each time I go to the next level, the next position, that I've got that foundation set.
Who were the people that influenced your foundation? Where did you obviously, I don't think somebody comes up with all of that on their own, not to say that you said you did, but
No.
who did you see in your environment? Was it family? Was it coworkers? I'm assuming maybe some supervisors would give you tips, but originally, when did that start, being shaped for you in terms of here's some tactics to utilize when you're going in for the sale, whether it's over the phone or in person?
Yeah, so I think it's bigger than sales. So there's fundamental principles that were originally taught to me from my mother. So the drive and the motivation came from my mother. I watched her, what she did, and she was one of the first African American women to be at this very large corporation in computer information systems at Upjohn, which is now called Pfizer or Pharmacia, whatever the name is. But she was one of the first to be a part of that. Her drive was really strong. So I seen the drive that she had. Then I moved to my high school principal. He taught me four principles that are in the book that helped elevate how I thought about not just business, but about life. Small little piece about that. And at my high school, Kalamazoo Central, World Class Giants, he was the principal there his first year. Big guy. He wore a suit every single day. That was the first time I seen, number one, a principal with a suit on. But he would stand outside, rain, sleet, snow, and this is in Michigan, so it gets really cold. He would shake the hand of every student that walked into the building before you came in. Now, at the time, I thought, this guy's crazy. Why would you do that? Now,
Yeah.
as we got older and I had a relationship with him, he said, listen, I wanted to set the tone with each and every person before you entered my building. You know that I'm with you and I'm watching. So my energy is connected to you before you walk into that building. You're talking, I don't know, 1,500 students. This isn't a small high school. And so those principles that he provided to me were very helpful, helped me shape out some of the framework for how I look at fatherhood and things of that nature. And then lastly, I'll say is my old pastor back in Michigan. He helped me shape a lot of things around just like accomplishing things
Mhm.
that I didn't know that I could do. And he would push me, he would challenge me to do more and get more involved. Even when I was in college, he wasn't a pastor at that time, but he would want to push me to do more on campus. So those are three influential figures in my life that, again, outside of sales, because sales is just a piece, even though even my
Mm.
called the sales blueprint, but it's a microcosm of how we approach life for success. Those three gave me a lot of the tools that I needed to be successful.
What did you go to school for? College?
Computer information systems and Black American studies were my undergrad, and in my MBA, it was business management.
Okay.
Now, I don't do anything. I don't use that computer information systems degree, by the way. I
I mean,
went to school.
think of how many people you know that they don't use their degree that they
Yeah,
went to school for. I
yes,
mean, it's so many of us. I mean,
yes.
those experiences apply, the hard work applies, the commitment applies, but I mean, there's so many people that have stepped away from that specific industry, but, life just takes you in different directions. Um,
I concur. I think around I graduated in 2001 from undergrad. And at that time, you had the whole Y2K and all this.
yeah.
So computers were just like, that was the thing is if you could program Cobalt and A plus plus, like you were like, you were on a trajectory. Like that was like the AI of back then.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
obviously, there's a lot of evolution.
yeah. But I appreciate you sharing the story of, your mother, the principal, the pastor. I think that, we forget about energy, and it plays into the mirror that you had in front of yourself. We're so reactive, we're trying to survive in our day-to-day, we're trying to make it in what our duties are, that we forget to kind of step outside of ourselves and be intentional about how to start off the day. And you're
Yeah.
seeing more and more, here's a life hack for waking up in the morning and doing, getting the day started right. But I like the human connection, especially of your principal in this example of just kind of starting these students' days off right with that handshake, with that welcome, with I'm in it with you and I'm watching you as well, just to kind
Yes.
of set that tone. And I think we forget how influential our tone, our energy, our body language can be for ourselves as well as those that we're trying to work with and those we're trying to impact and influence.
Yes. Yes. I think you're spot on, and you can take that to work. You can take that into your own household. How many times do we really take for granted our significant other, our spouses, our children, where we walk up, hey, how you doing? Hey, good morning. We just walk around. What kind of energy is that
Yeah.
setting for the day? Right? Are we setting our children up for success by feeding this energy of positivity and motivation, like to start the morning? Again, I'm not asking anybody to jump off the wall and hey, everybody,
Yeah.
but just setting that, hey, good morning, John. How you doing? Like that's not fake. That's not, it's just simply good morning. I'm looking at you. I'm giving you this I care. I'm focused on you. Same thing with the wife or the husband, whatever you have. But how many times do we take that for granted? How many times do we step into the office? Like, oh my goodness, I'm back at work. How do you think your day is going to go? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why I had a bad day, John, but the first thing I said was, oh my goodness, I'm headed back to work.
Yeah.
Be
And I mean,
intentional.
my kids, their school is more cognizant of emotions and talking through them and understanding them, which I think is great because people may consider it too soft or woo woo, whatever it is, but you got to understand your emotions. You got to understand how you start your day, how you start your interactions is going to impact, the results you get, the work that you do. So I think that's powerful. Now, Eric, you've already spoken to it. But just in connecting the dots and having you speak specifically to this, does it make sense from your childhood that this is where you are now, that this is the work that you're doing? How do you reconcile the two?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And yeah, I think when I was younger, the things that I did really well is I had a really strong drive, had a motor. I didn't necessarily know exactly where I wanted to go with it, but I knew I wanted to. Like I tell you this, which was interesting. So I had a couple friends growing up. I wanted to be in the NFL, and my other friend Paul wanted to be in the NHL, hockey player. And then I had another one that wanted to be in the NBA. But here's the point. The point is, as we went along throughout our careers, we quickly determined by high school he wasn't going to make it to the National Hockey League. I wasn't going to make it to the National Football League. You start, and then you start saying, well, what am I? Like, what are we going to do? Like, does life look like if we're not going to do the thing that we wanted to do? And then you start saying, well, maybe I need to start doing this. And then I begin to change. And my goal went from the NFL to I just want to be rich. And at the time when you're young, rich is like a number. I don't know, whatever the number was, maybe it's $1 million, but it was just this floating number about being rich. And then as you continue to get older, it became all right. So maybe it's more wealthy. Okay, maybe it's not just wealthy. Maybe it's how can I help others get better? And it begins to morph. So it's again a lot of young students that I talk to that, especially in high school, they're like, I don't know exactly what I want to do when I get older. That's not necessarily a terrible thing. It's not a bad thing. You've got time, right? Set your sights on something you want to begin to build out a roadmap. But at the time, for me, it took a little while to find where I wanted to be. And ultimately, John, when I got to the point where I began to see life a little different, it was when I had my daughter. That was my grow up phase. I grew up quickly right then. I had this long hair. I had really, really long hair. As soon as I had my daughter, I cut not this low. Okay, I didn't cut this low, but I cut my hair shorter because it was time to grow up and be a professional. And that was the next evolution when I continued to evolve and become more serious about my career, about family. So I think looking back on my childhood, all of these things help mold and shape, and all the trials and tribulations that come along with it, they helped me become the person that I am today, which is I still enjoy coaching, motivating, and being around people. I'm a glass half full guy. Not to the fault of I can't see when it's brick is dripping out of the box, right? It's
Yeah,
more it's
it's not like a toxic positivity. You're realistic, you're
yes,
pragmatic, but
absolutely.
you wanna
Yes.
start off on that foot.
Yes. If we're doing the right things, even with sales, while attainment is very important, I am more focused on what are we doing that's leading to the sales. Because if we're only focused on sales, then we're losing track on what does it take. Well, in order to get a sale, you have to have some kind of meeting, some kind of demonstration. You have to show your services. Well, in order to show the services, you have to have some sort of meeting to lead to the demonstration. Well, in order to have that meeting, you got to have some kind of prospecting done. Well, if we focus on those earlier steps and we make sure that we're doing those well, then the sale is a formality because we've done the first things. So even looking at that, it's not just all about the end result. It's looking at what are we doing and checking those steps to make sure we're doing the right steps at the right time, which will lead to the right results.
Love it. I love how you lay it out. Um, I love the humanity you bring to sales because people hear sales and they have a different view of it, right? But I love the way that you bring it up and that it's not just the number at the end, but it is that process of setting up that environment, setting up that relationship. So thank
Yes,
you for
yes,
that. Eric, when
absolutely.
it comes to you, I've heard a couple powers, but what do you consider your main superpower?
Mm, that's a good question. I was just in a meeting Friday, and the same question was asked: "Is hey, what do you think your superpower is?" One, it was narrowed down to um, motivating people. I don't know when I developed this, to be honest with you. I think I credit it back to going back to the pastor. I was asked very quickly to be very engaged in the church, particularly around the youth ministry.
Mhm.
And when you are teaching and coaching 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 year olds, you can't speak the way we speak to John. I can't speak the exact same way. A lot of it is storytelling. It's painting pictures with your words. It's slowing down, not saying so many words. It's getting more engagement. It's being more engaged with your hands. So I do hand. I don't do that one, but I do more hand movements so that you can, so that you understand. So I learned a lot from that. So motivation and motivating people is one. I'd say, secondly, superpower is. I think it's. I heard from my wife. It's my attitude. The attitude that I have is I'm never out of it. Doesn't matter what happened. What I do is I keep a perspective of the bigger picture. Every day, every moment will not be great. You're going to lose people in your life. You're going to lose sales. You're going to lose promotion, like whatever. You're going to lose something. But the bigger picture, if you keep that in mind, then that's probably why I don't go too low, right? When things happen, bad things happen, I don't have low lows. I keep things in perspective. So I think those are two things, I guess you call them superpower, but things that I kind of tout my hat on.
No, they make sense. They make sense because they keep you grounded.
Yeah.
You can always come back to those. There are moments where people they get maybe too lost in what's going on around them, but they always kind of come back to their values, their core, and I think those
Yes.
are two great ones that you have. Eric,
Yes.
what does leadership mean to you? What does great leadership look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, for me, leadership is it's taking care of and being a part of something special, number one, and helping folks do something more. Let me keep it kind of vague. Doing something more. And I think servant leadership is the best example of leadership where you could use Jesus if you want to, but if you use a person that's basically in it with you, I don't want a leader that stands at the top of the door and yells about what they do. I
Mm.
want someone that's in there with me that knows what I'm doing because they're going to help me get through that. So, what I try to do from a leadership perspective is I get to know everyone. It's got to be a relationship, there's some sort of relationship there. And then I'm going to help guide. Maybe it's just strategy. There are other times where I'm leading by, again, grabbing a broom, right? Maybe you're grabbing a broom, you're sweeping, but you're still a leader. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm the main one giving, barking all the directions, but being a part of that journey, making sure that if things go low, we're still in it. We're still in it, formulating that game plan. So that's when I think of servant leadership, that's the biggest thing for me.
Thank you for sharing that. Now let's jump into the book if you can. Why don't you introduce the book and tell us how it came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So behind me, you see, but it's called The Sales Blueprint: What Winners Do Differently. And I wrote this book, started, gosh, early last year. And how it came to be, I've been at a couple of companies, large companies, and I've noticed a few things very simple and quickly. Most organizations have salespeople that sell without a strategy. They just sell, which there's nothing wrong with just selling. Like if you're charismatic,
Mhm.
you can probably get people to buy some things from you. They like being around you. They like the personality. You can be confident, and all of a sudden you get it. What I wanted to see, and when I came to this company, Everbridge, and when I came to QTS, what I wanted to build is a process, a repeatable process that one can do that equates to success. What does good look like? And so I began to build out a strategy. I'll be transparent. Like a lot of the companies that I work with at the time when I received the job, I wasn't very familiar with the products. Now, here's what I mean by that. One of my first corporate jobs was at Quest, which became CenturyLink. I never sold telco or telecommunication services before. When I went to QTS, I didn't necessarily have a lot of data center experience. When I moved over to Everbridge, I didn't have a lot of software as a service experience. So a lot of me building out the process is number one, it's me learning, but it's also trying to define for everybody and for everyone included, what does good look like? So the book that I created is the series of steps that are taken to lead to success. It's mindset being prepared for success. So I was asked to present to all of the new business sellers last year, early January, and I was asked to present what does my process look like? How does my team have success? Why? And I walk through the sales blueprint, which is my blueprint for success. Now I had some fun with it. I tied it to the blueprint, right? One of my favorite albums from Jay Z. I tied it to the blueprint, and I
Mhm.
made this thing out of it. And I put some quotes in there to motivate as I walked through the steps. And I received extremely positive feedback. A lot of sellers were slacking me and sending me emails saying, "Hey, this is great. Hey, what question about this?" And I remember after the meeting, I went to my wife and said, "You know what? This is interesting. Maybe we could do something with this." 6 months later, I'm deep into the book. I'm probably halfway through it. 8 months later, I'm finished with the book. So that was the root of how it started. Number one, it was really about me learning the process. And so I built out a series of steps that you can do to lead to success. And then secondly, it's all right, now we got to get it out there. Now we got to evangelize.
Can you provide an overview of the book? What's that path that you lead the reader on? Maybe the names of the chapters. How did you decide to organize it?
Yeah. So I'll start with the last piece, the name of the chapters. When you write a book, you build out like these different sections of what is it that you're trying to accomplish. So I've got 5 steps, and so I built out things in the middle. So there's 10 chapters total. Then you got a final blueprint. But basically, other than 10 chapters. And what I did is I walked through each phase. The biggest piece
Mhm.
of what I want the reader to really understand is success is not accidental. You don't stumble into success. You might stumble into winning the lottery, but it is what it is. It's really being very consistent with certain things and lifestyle that lead to success. Going back to my analogy on I'm not concerned as much with attainment. I'm really looking at what are we doing? Are we prepared? And are we doing the things that are going to lead to success? So the overarching journey is starting with the mindset. We talked about this with the principle. It's how are you preparing in the morning? How are you preparing for success? What are you doing? Then we move into preparation for meetings. How do we prepare for whatever we're going to do? What does that look like? Then we move into the actual meeting. Well, once we get to the meeting, then what are we doing? Like, what does good look like when you're in a meeting? And then afterward, the debrief. What does that look like? What are you supposed to say? How do you debrief? How do you debrief and say what you did well and what you did not do well without hurting anyone's feelings?
Yeah.
Right? How do you do those things? And then it's really about, I call it the four pillars, which I learned from my high school principal that we talked about. Is keeping a balance in your life. So, John, as family men, if we have, if the career, if our work is suffering and we're not doing well and there's pressure, there is another part of our world that will be impacted. If we look at the pillars, I call the four pillars, you have faith, family, health, and career. When your health is out of whack, it will affect one of the other three. It will affect how you engage with your family potentially. It's going to affect how you perform at work. It's going to have an effect. If you're having dialogue that's constructive with the wife at one morning, your coworkers may feel that. So then I get into that, right? Understanding that how to keep that balance because that balance is important to have that optimal level of success. Again, removing sales, it's
Yeah.
really about how we prepare for life. How do we have success in life? And sales is just the overarching message because I spent 25 years in it. So that's my overall kind of central message, as well as what I want the readers to extract out of that.
So, Eric, when you say you were making your way through these companies and you were seeing things that you extracted and determined could be repeatable, what did that look like? I don't know if you can provide specific examples, but as you, even maybe before you were even considering the book and you were learning
Yeah,
yourself and you were noting these different things in these environments, what did that look like? What were you seeing? Can you provide an example?
sure. The prime example, an easy example is at most companies, if you meet with sales rep A in California and sales rep B in New York, the overall message that the company, because it's all one company, the message should be very similar. What should be different is the personalities. I'll spin this and come back. If I go to McDonald's in Texas and then I go back home to a McDonald's, that chicken nuggets or hamburgers is going to taste the same. What's going to be different is the interaction with the actual employee. All right, maybe a little southern drawl down in Texas, maybe a little more straightforward in New York. But the actual hamburger, the meat, the food is going to be the same. In most companies, the messages are all over the place. The sales rep in California has a different presentation that they're presenting to the one in New York. Or the documents that's being used, the presentations are different. You would be surprised at how many companies have one centralized deck, but yet there's 14 to 15 different iterations to it. There's not a standard flow. Now, has it worked for years? Sure, it has. But is that the best way of conducting business? So, one of the things I wanted to do is almost make it into a franchise model. When it doesn't matter if you meet with the East or the West, the message overall about Everbridge or QTS, whatever it is, that company should be similar. The deck should be similar. The talk track should be similar. The variation is me and you. How
Mhm.
I present the information may be unique. So that's one of the fundamental things that I see a lot of companies are doing is they're just all over the place with their decks and the material, and it's just not a centralized flow to what the expectation. Again, I'll say what good looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, some examples that come to mind is just even when you're calling customer service, right? Because I mean, to me, customer service is part of sales because for me, just my take on it, my psychology of just understanding everything and seeing everything is if I talk to one person and then a day later I talk to the other person, and there have been instances where I'm talking to three different people across 3 different days, getting three different answers, calling about the same topic.
Yes.
Now, for me, and maybe for yourself, because we're talking about that psychology of just getting things together. For me, we're not even talking anymore about the problem that I had. Now I'm thinking about this company where it's disorganized. I'm really getting 3 different answers from 3 different people that are working for the same corporation. It's just
Hmm.
incredible. So I like the fact that you said before, like, just before anything else, like, here's, like, the standard script or
Yes,
deck or whatever it may be, and then, yes, based on where you are, based on
yes,
who you are, your personality, your energy, you can customize it, but let's stay on track. Let's have that. I mean, there's several books on it, like the discipline provides you with the freedom. As long as
yes,
you have that core message, then around that, you can customize it to what your experience is in your neck of the woods, wherever it may be.
absolutely.
But I mean, that thing with the operators was just like, come on, and it was costing me money. It was costing me money. Like, one
Yes.
person said I had a certain deal to get this. Okay, great. So I went along with it, and then I saw something on right away on my bill. So I called back the next day. Oh no, we don't know what that's from. That person was wrong. We can't do anything about it. It's like, so there are a lot of instances where you're getting different messages, different core messages.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
and that's the way I look at it, is the way you're communicating, the way you're sharing, the way you're coordinating. That to me is your personality as an organization. It shows me what kind of investment you have in the process, and the respect that you have for your customers, that they can get a standard response from whoever they deal with. Again, customized based to the region, but just that starting point, just that discipline, get that
yes.
right.
But even John, even in the fundamental, I'll say just like in the case with working with you, I've done several podcasts, and there are some podcast hosts that I'm not knocking anything. Everybody has their own approach. Everybody's not Walmart, but you just show up and you just start going. There's no prep. You didn't discuss anything. But what you did is you sent out information. Hey, Eric, here's what I typically, hey, take a look at this. Hey, we're going to do this. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you a first line that we can get on, and we're going to prep and make sure the audio's right, the video right. And then we have like, that's preparation. A lot of even your peers, they don't have that same level of preparation. But that's a fundamental
Yeah.
key of success is preparation. How do you prepare for the day? Anybody, like most authors, can come on your show with nothing else and do okay because you're basically talking about their own book. But is that the best version of themselves and for your audience that they're going to get if they just show up? You could do your job. You could interview people by just showing up with maybe 5, 10 minutes of research. But is that the best version of your interview that you're going to give to your listeners?
And that's why I do that stuff, because I want people to understand that this isn't about, as much as I love scrolling through Spotify, collecting all these conversations, it's not about quantity. There has to be, I want that quantity, I want that longevity, but
Sure.
I want the quality as well. And there have been instances where I've had conversations, whatever it may have been, but I always want to ensure somebody that I want this to turn out as a good, solid product for them as much
Yes.
as I want it for me. Because
Hmm.
most of my guests I haven't spoken to like this in a while since the episode. We'll connect on LinkedIn, talk here and there. I don't they're not, I could reach out to them, they can reach out to me, we can network, help each other out, but they're not like ongoing connections. Regardless though, the
Yes.
impression that I leave on them, what I send for the podcast leading up to it, here's the link, here's the standard questions that I ask, but I everybody knows I go down tangents. Let me know what you need before we started. Do you have any questions? I want to make sure the person is as relaxed and uh trust me that I'm trying to paint this both in the best picture. So again, yeah, I appreciate your comments. I think that for me, that's very important because I want people to see that I take their time seriously. I take their reputation seriously because this is all based on the work that you've put. This is your life's work.
Sure.
So I want to make sure that I demonstrate it in the best possible light. Is it going to work out perfectly? Are there going to be glitches in a conversation, whatever might happen? No, but at least we did our best to prepare as best as possible. Yeah, I'm sure you've been in plenty of situations in sales, business, whatever it may be, where you prepared as much as possible and the end result still didn't pan out the way that you wanted to, but there were
Absolutely.
probably lessons that you learned regardless.
Mike Tyson once said, "Everybody has a plan until you get hit in the mouth." But before I said that, I would say, but this is the central overall message, though, John, around preparation. It's the mindset. It starts with the mindset of how am I going to approach today? This is outside of sales. This is kind of where the book is going. This is for life. Is how
Yeah.
am I going to approach today? Once you frame your mind around how you want to approach it, then you prepare for what you're going to do, whatever that looks like. 9 to 5 job, whatever it is, if you're a dentist, if you're a construction worker, whatever it is, you start with the mindset. How you get up in the morning, what are you doing that's intentional, that's going to help in those 4 pillars? And then how are you planning out that day to be successful? If you don't want to be in that field that you're in anymore, then what are you doing? Start with a plan and begin to facilitate that. Get your mind right. So many people have the mindset of, I can't get out of the job. I'm a victim of the job, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
But they're not reaching their potential because they haven't set their mind around, I gotta go past it. I have a friend that wants to start his own company, and he's afraid to do so, which is understandable, right? Stepping out on your own is a big deal. He was recently let go from his job. I said, "Hey, this might be this opportunity that you've been asking for. You've been
Yeah.
wanting to step out. You've been talking about it for a couple years. There's been some changes at the company. This could be your time." Now, I'm not saying go all in and don't have any backup plan, right? But this might be
Yeah.
that time. But it starts again with the mindset. Mindset one, and then preparation two.
Yeah. You've talked about family. I've mentioned family. That's the main thing that I try to instill in my kids is just their mindset.
Yeah,
Anybody could say, well, since the dawn of time, raising kids has always been about, passing on lessons. Yeah. But it's like, how?
yeah, yes,
In my generation, mostly it was parents saying, get good grades, stay out of trouble. And so I got good grades and I stayed out of trouble. But was that, and I love my parents to death.
yeah,
But was
yeah,
that really sharpening me and preparing me for curiosity, for, how to react to life, how to prepare for life? And now because of that generation difference, the conversation with my kids is different than the conversation my parents had with me. That was a different story. They were immigrants, blue collar workers working all the time, so it was different circumstances.
sure.
But it's incredible that I can have these conversations with my kids about mindset. If that didn't work out, this is why. It's not try harder, which I may have heard like in the 80s. Try harder, go back. It's really sitting down and understanding, okay, why do you feel that way? Let's walk through it. And it's not to coddle or anything like that. Cause I think any kind of tension in their life, as long as they're safe, I think they need to feel uncomfortable just to kind of understand that life's not always going to be comfortable. But it's amazing. It's almost like an honor to be able to walk my kids through their mindset and really sit down with them and talk in that fashion because I
Yeah,
didn't have that as a kid.
yes, yes.
And that kind of conversation, you can have it with somebody. My middle one's in kindergarten, or you can
Hmm.
have it with somebody that's a seasoned executive.
Yes.
Asking them what they're thinking, that coaching mentality, I'm glad that I can have that in those formative years that we're in with them right now.
So, John, I picked up on, I think it was a church, but it's one of the things that I've been doing over the last probably 7 years that I think is it helps with my youngest son. Is after every day of school, I ask 2 questions and a few follow-ups, and it's really simple, but you'd be surprised by the responses that you get. I ask him, "Give me your highs from today. What was the highest point of the day? And then give me your lowest point of the day." And I don't put parameters on how you define it other than the first couple times. But then once it's the highest point, whatever, I got an A on my test. Like, how did you feel? Oh man, I felt like because now you're able to get them to pull some of the feelings into it, because these young men and women are going to go through these feelings. And if you're unable to articulate your feelings, then you're going to have a challenging time,
Mm.
number one, in corporate America, and then two, dealing with any kind of adversity or someone that doesn't agree. Same thing. What was the lowest point of the day for you? Oh man, I had such and such. I got an F on the test. Hopefully not a F, but F on the test. Oh, well, okay. Well, how did you feel after you got that? Man, I was such and such. Okay. Well, what else can we, right? Now you got your follow up questions, but it opens the door for so much. Now, sometimes he gets used to it and he already has his answer prepared that I can, and I'll have to ask, follow up questions to it. But again,
Yeah.
going back to your point, it's how do you get that information out of your child so that you can listen and help them go through their challenges without always giving them the answer.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I was having this conversation. I stopped by my mom's and I was there with my sons, and she's like, "You're such a good father. I see how you are with them." And we went through this whole kind of thing. Yeah, it was different when my sister and I were kids,
Yeah.
to now. And it's funny. It's one of those things where the joke or the memes, whatever you see, is like your parents are easier, obviously, on your kids than than they were on you, right? Like
Yes.
when I'd raise my voice at my son, not screaming or anything, but raise my voice, and then she'd be like, "Come on, like ease up, back off." It's like, do you realize what would have happened if I was a kid doing it? So those conversations are just so valuable because you
Yeah.
demonstrate to them, I have an appreciation for the way that you raised me. You did the best you could. And it's amazing that she realizes what I'm doing. She's like, I
Yes.
love that you ask him how he's feeling and you try to sort out through the feelings. And I tell my son, last thing about kids and we'll move on, but you can feel a certain way. If in a moment you're mad at me, that's fine. Tell me, but it's all about how you demonstrate that, how you reflect
Right.
that. So it's an
Yeah.
ongoing experiment. I'm trying to do my best, but we'll see where it goes. Um,
Absolutely. I love it.
and thank you for indulging me. I think all those that kind of mindset, just again, these lessons that you provide in this book, it starts, even though it is a sales book, like you said, these are life lessons. These are tactical life lessons about understanding yourself. So I appreciate that so much more diving into that with you. Eric, what I'm curious, when it comes to you, how did this writing this book change you? How did you evolve? Did anything change in you as you were putting this book out, aside from writing and maybe the difficulty and the challenges of kind of editing all that? But in terms
Sure.
of the ideas in the book, is there anything that stood out or anything that changed in your mind or anything that changed in you in general from having the book out?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think when I started writing the book, I knew what I wanted to say. But writing a book, you got to say much more, right, than just that framework that I built out. And it challenged me to think more deeply about the concepts of each piece that I lay out in the blueprint. It challenged me to do some additional research to come up with different things that I can tie into it, and how can I make this engaging, right? And then I use it on my sales team. To be honest with you, it's like some of the concepts I'll use. But each chapter of the book, I put some kind of interaction with it where you have to answer some questions. There's Q&A and all this other stuff, and it forced me to think outside of the box. And
Mhm.
I think it helped me become a better leader, because now I had to grab a couple of additional books and look up, man, how did they frame this right here? And how do they do this? So I think from a leadership perspective, it helped me, because now I have more information that I had to research and understand to be able to properly apply this to the principles of the book. I think that's one. I think one of the most impactful pieces for me is I wrote this from the mindset of a seller with basic principles. But one of the first comments that I got back from a reader was from an educator. And she sent me this long note that basically said, stop saying this is for sales. This is helping me. I love this piece, and I can apply this to my life. And I was
Mm.
like, whoa, wait a minute. I knew that it would apply, but I didn't know it would apply, if that makes sense. And so that's one of the pieces that began to open my eyes. And then my wife kind of ran with it and said, you know what? You gotta think. past just the sales piece because there's so much in here that's not sales, it's life applied. So that's been the biggest learning piece for me, is like hearing a single parent reach out and say, this concept around how you look at your pillars help me shape how I'm looking and raising my child to be able to do this because I'm doing such and such and such. Or again, the educator, like those things, the reader's responses really make a difference, and they will change how you view and look at your work. To be honest with
So are you I know you've talked about bringing some of these ideas to your team, but are you at the point in the book process and, PR, whatever you're doing, marketing the book, are you in the process where you've put together workshops based on the book? Are you in the process of doing that or have you done it?
you. Yes, yes. So good question as well. So what I've done since the book, I have a few sales professionals that reached out to me for personal coaching. And for the ones that I've started with, they are at a certain point. Either they want to get to leadership or they want to get better. So I've been doing some coaching. I've had a couple of engagements, just with speaking engagements about the book. I have not completed a workshop yet. I am in the process of putting that together. But it's been such a blessing to see how many lives and how many doors have been opened simply by writing the book and having some
Mm.
impact. But to your point, I enjoy the sales coaching, like the ones that I'm working with, just listening and watching and understanding what they're doing and trying to help them. Going back to what I enjoy doing is the coaching. I enjoy that. So that's a big piece.
Yeah, and just what you shared in terms of seeing people come to you and say, "This is helping me." That goes back to what you said before when you were younger and you're like, "I want to be rich."
Yeah.
And then you're
Yeah.
like, "Okay, maybe I want to be wealthy. Okay, maybe I want to make an impact on people."
Yes.
It's amazing, I've had that similar journey when you think of a certain way and then later in life it's like, "Okay, more freedom, more time with my kids." Like the bills
Yes.
are
Yes.
taken care of, everybody's good, there's savings, there's investments here and there, but more time with my kids, that's where the value is. And I think that definition shifts as you go, but it's
Great.
incredible just to see seeing it in your face when you say that people have come to you and just you just see the joy in your face when you hear that it's helping people that aren't even in sales, but that it's helping people in life.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really really impactful. There's a insert that I have in the book from a book called "The Death of a Salesman." It was one that you had to read back in school. If you remember, have you ever read that? Yeah.
I
So,
never
guy
read
named
it, but I do know the book. Yeah.
so the gist of it is, it's a traveling salesman back in the day where you just jumped in the car and you had to drive all over the place. And his name was Willie Loman. And he spent most of his time, he had a family, a wife and kids, and he spent most of his time in the car traveling to different appointments. In his mind, he's doing everything he can and all of this traveling and spending time away from his family so that he can make money to help provide for his family. From his family's perspective, they've got a dad that is not there. He's always gone. Our bills paid, yes, but I don't have access to my father. But my father's thinking, I'm doing all this for them. And they're thinking, why is he gone all the time? And you hear it's this crazy cycle. The end of the book, I'll leave it for those that may know about it or want to read it. But the point of it is, that's a lot of times with life. We're disconnected. Sometimes we'll put so much emphasis on being a great business person or a great seller or whatever it is in your career, and we lose track because we're so focused that we're not spending time with our wives, spouses, or our children. And all of a sudden our especially as men, we say, well, we're doing this for the family. And ultimately we're doing all this traveling and we're not spending time, and we have to balance it out. Do we want to be a world-class father? Do we want to be a world-class business leader? Do we want to be a world-class husband? What if, heaven forbid this concept, we could be a world-class business leader and a world-class father and a world-class husband? Like, what if that was possible? If we put the same amount of emphasis on what we do with our daily lives for our job that we do with our families? Like, what if we did that? Is that even possible? Yes, it is. We just have to make sure that there's balance to
Yeah. And I think that's where coaching comes in, obviously. Whatever kind of coaching it is, it's more in the end, it's more about balance than anything else.
it. Yes.
It's more
Yes.
about balancing your career with your spouse, with your children. Because some of us are just so committed. Once we find that thing that we're meant for, like it
Mhm.
just lights us up. So how
Yes.
do we balance what lights us up, aside from family, but your business, your work, your mission, right? Your
Yes.
legacy, whatever it may be, with your kids, with your wife, with your community, whatever it may be. I think as long as people are aware of it, that they should
Yes.
take it into account. And I think that's what coaching does is it opens up. In the end, that's what it comes down to. How are you balancing everything that's calling on you with what is calling from within you? Ooh,
Absolutely.
that was good. That was
That was
good,
that was
right?
a bar right there. That was a bar. That's like that's a mic drop real quick right there.
Eric, what do you think, not to put too much pressure on you, but what do you think is next for your writing, or what do you wanna do in the future? Are there any areas as you were writing in this book that you're like, "Okay, in the future, I kinda wanna do something in this area or build upon a certain idea from this book." Anything, you see in the horizon?
Yeah, I think from where we go from here, there's two avenues that I'm going to go. One is I'm going to continue on with the coaching. I think it's going to continue to spread. I've got a pretty strong social media presence that we're building out. And so we're going to continue to push that. And then, secondly, I'm going to become more engaged in conducting workshops, working with companies, kind of helping build out strategies to move from hoping deals close to using more of a structured approach to making sure deals close. And that's a big struggle for most organizations. So I can see myself going in there. From an overall book perspective, I've been asked multiple times now, am I going to create a sales blueprint for like real estate? And because I've been doing real estate for 20 years. And I always say, like, real estate, I have more passion with real estate than I do with corporate. With corporate, I've had some God given like talents, and I work hard at them for corporate America. But it's not really a passion of mine. I do it
Mhm.
pretty well, but it's not a passion. Is that I use my work to fuel and to funnel and to finance my passion, which is real estate, which is investment side of the house, which is like coaching and stuff like that. So I have that opportunity, that flexibility. So I think my next book will be more around, instead of the sales blueprint, more of a real estate blueprint for success or something like that, something along the lines of the education around real estate and making it very simple. I'm a very simple guy, but I want to
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
simplify the process, make it easy to understand, easy to digest, and just something that is a repeatable process using a formula like that.
Eric, taking all the information that we've discussed, the conversations, the lessons we've shared back and forth, how would you, in a few sentences, what are the lessons you hope people take from your book? Because we've covered so many areas, but if you had to sell it to somebody who wasn't quite sure this is a book for them, what would you say to them?
Yeah. The overall theme is consistent, is success is not accidental. Success happens with doing certain fundamental things multiple times that lead to success. That's the overall message of what I'm trying to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be about sales. I think the second piece is the mindset plays the most important role in what you're going to do in life and how it's going to pan out. I'll give this one example that I've given a couple times. There was a TED talk done by Susie, I mess her name up, I think it's Colbert, and it's based on the body language, the importance of body, the way you hold your body language, what it means to other people. And the image that she gives is, imagine yourself, John, before one of your big meetings. You sit in the mirror for 2 minutes before that meeting. And for men, she said, to do like a sit at the table pose
Yeah.
where you're looking in the mirror, right, for 2 minutes. For women, she said, it's the Wonder Woman pose, hand on your hip, looking out. The point of that has nothing to do with anybody else. It's really about you and how you see yourself, how you perceive yourself. I'm seeing myself in this big form. When people win track meets, first thing they do is this: you're making yourself big, right? You're filling up. They get excited, they throw their hands up. Like, all of this is that perception of, how do I see myself? And you want to see yourself not necessarily where you are today, but where can you go, the destination. And that's part of what that looking in the mirror does. That all starts with the mindset. If I can get, if there's no other, if nothing else that I can get across, how important the mindset is to how you're going to shape your day, your hour, your life, your week, whatever you want to call it. The mindset is extremely important.
There is something about looking in the mirror, though. You know what? Obviously, when you're not looking in the mirror, you know your view, your point of view,
Yes.
and you're reacting, you're going to the world. So there is something about stepping in front of a mirror. I think I did it the other day. I go into the bathroom and I just looked at my posture and I kind of like put myself up. So
Yes.
there is something about looking in the mirror and making that connection with yourself visually, because you don't know what it looks like when you're in your point of view and thinking that you're expressing yourself in a certain way, looking a certain way. So I love that. I love that example. Eric, this book obviously is yours. We're talking about your book. We have discussed your book. What books stand out to you? What books, if you were to come back on here, which I'd love for you to
Yeah.
do, to discuss a book that's made an impact on you, what's a title or a couple titles that stand out for you?
I got a couple here. So I'll start. Actually, I'll do one first. I'll start with The Qualified Sales Leader. This is a leadership book. And so the author is John McMahon. And so this book is powerful because what he does, he spent several years in a very high level position from chief revenue officer to sales leaders. And he's helped organizations develop leaders by using a methodical process called MedPick. The point of it is he's developed a very simple process on best how to forecast deals. And to become a very qualified sales leader, it's developing that person, the sales rep, on how to forecast properly. So a lot of what I write about isn't forecasting, it's preparing and being in that meeting. But part two is there's a expectation to the business that every sales organization has, because a business, mostly publicly traded businesses, they have to report what they're going to do to the Wall Street. Well, how do they know what they're going to sell? They're looking at the CRM, the systems, to see what is forecasted to sell. The problem is if you don't know how to forecast well and you keep missing your forecast, that means Wall Street. Yeah, you see where I'm going. That's the
Yeah.
first one. The second, fundamental, rich dad, poor dad. Real estate wise, business like this is key. If you're not familiar with this one, this is one of the fundamental books. If anybody asks me about real estate, it provides an example of different ways to shape your mind to think about how to become what's considered wealthy. And it's not being the smartest person in the room. It's not necessarily growing up with money. It's what can you do? How do you go about it? What's the thought process? What's the mindset? So those are two good books. You know what? Let me get one more. I'd be remiss if I didn't put this out there. It's called the Ultimate Entrepreneur. It's by a gentleman named Howard Hughes, and it's a really good book as well. If you're an entrepreneur, I think it's good because it teaches fundamentals around entrepreneurship, and he expresses ways that he has gone through trials and tribulations to get where he's at with that. So, anyways, that's three good books I would say that are really strong.
Thank you. I appreciate those titles. I'm always looking for great titles and, sitting down with you for the last hour, understanding the way your mind works, the values you hold. That's what I love about leading with the story to get to the book that we're going to discuss, because now I know what is important to you. I know what value you hold, what you want to provide to other people. So thank you for those titles. Eric, and wrapping up, is there anything that I didn't cover? What are you up to these days? Anything that I didn't share? Anything you want to share at all? The floor is yours. Share anything that you might want to, that again, that I might have missed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll spin around to this one this time. So yeah, I'll say sales blueprint that I've talked about a couple times. I just released the audible version. So the audiobook version of the book is available on Amazon. So that's very exciting going through that process. Wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be, John, I'll be honest with you, but the audiobook is available. I've been building out content on my website. So the sales blueprint for success.com. So there is a lot of information, all the podcasts that I've been on, a lot of the merchandise. We started launching that. The Hamilton Sales Academy merchandise is available on the website. So those are some things that I'm doing. I think that probably covers. I got a couple of large speaking engagements coming up. One in particular with Texas A&M sometime next year. So I've just been
Nice.
blessed with a lot of opportunities, John. I just and I appreciate this one as well. And I will say, you are a professional. Love the way you conduct your interviews and your conversations.
I appreciate that, man. Sincerely, really. So, before we leave, the Hamilton Sales Academy, is that your coaching services?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's where I do my personal kind of coaching, and that ranges from, as of now, it's been sitting with sales professionals that are looking to get better at their craft, and there's also individuals that reached out that are looking to go to that next level, which is a leadership level or to a C level or VP level. So I highly recommend, not just for me, but one of the areas that we didn't touch on, and I apologize, we're out of time, but one of the areas that we didn't touch on is one of the areas that really helped me improve is one of my companies provided us with an executive coach. And in that time with the executive coach, I didn't even know how much I grew. One thing that he challenged me to do that I would challenge your listeners to do, sales or not, he had me do what he called a 360 assessment,
Mhm.
which is basically there are ways that I think people perceive me, right? I think certain things about myself. And then I had to go to a coworker and
Yeah.
at my peer, ask that peer, hey, what do you think? Like, what are characteristics about me? Go to a family member, hey, wife. Go to somebody that reports to me, somebody that I report to, and then someone outside of this circle, maybe a best friend or an actual personal friend. Long story short, you pull all these things in and you realize, well, what I perceive as my personality compared to what others perceive, there's a gap. And it's okay if it's a gap, but
Yeah.
it's almost going back to the earlier thing we talked about is having the self-awareness. All right, there's a gap. Do I want to close the gap or do I not care? For me, it was I want to close this gap. So I need to tighten up on these things. And I began to tighten up on those things. So executive coaches or just coaches in general can be just tremendously valuable to your career, to your life. If it's a life coach, they have those as well. I
Yeah.
just love the concept of having somebody that specializes in a certain area for coaching.
Yeah, like you said, if there's a gap there, if you want to fix it or not, it's up to you. But just knowing that it's there, having that curiosity, that vulnerability to
Yeah.
put all
Yes.
those assessments out there and get that information back and use that. But as long as you're opening up your mind to understanding that the way that you're intentionally trying to show something may not be the way that it's being received, much in the way we talked about before. You have that right intention, but it's not coming across the right way, and something like that, an assessment absolutely can help you tighten that up and reconcile them, get them closer. And it doesn't have to be perfect. As long
Yeah.
as you're working in that direction of getting better, and better may change in different directions, but as long as you're trying to work in the right direction, even a little at a time, incrementally, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So again, we covered Eric's own book, The Sales Blueprint: What Winners Do Differently. Eric, thank you for this conversation. I enjoyed it so much. I really did. Just trading notes on fatherhood, just life, the lessons you shared, the stories you shared, the way you shared them was just incredible. So thank you so much for taking this time.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, John. Look forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, the invitation's already in the mail, that's how old I am. If there's anything I might have missed, I know I tend to go down tangents, but anything you feel I should have asked Eric, please let me know. You can reach out to me, I'll reach out to him, see what kind of additional insights and guidance I can get. In the meantime, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.